Everyone thought she couldn't stand. That was the joke. The wheelchair, the contract marriage, the quiet single dad who agreed because he had no choice. But when the priest asked if anyone objected, she placed her hands on the armrests and rose. Before we continue, I'd truly love to know where you're watching from. Drop it in the comments. If this story feels real so far, a gentle like really helps. And if you enjoy slow, human stories like this, subscribe and stay with us. Now, let's continue. The first time Daniel Walker saw Eleanor Hale, she was sitting perfectly still at the end of a long glass table, her wheelchair aligned with surgical precision, her posture calm, her face unreadable. Everyone else in the room kept shifting, clearing throats, avoiding eye contact. Daniel stayed quiet. That had always been his instinct. Silence was safer. The conference room overlooked the city, 40 floors up, the kind of view that made people feel small. Daniel felt it immediately. His palms were damp, his jacket was borrowed, his shoes were scuffed no matter how much he had tried to clean them. He kept his hands folded in his lap like he was waiting to be judged, which, in a way, he was. Eleanor Hale was the CEO of Hale Industries, infrastructure, defense contracts, real money, old money, the kind that didn't need to explain itself. She was also paralyzed from the waist down. That part everyone knew. That part everyone whispered about like it explained everything else. Daniel had not come here by choice. 3 weeks earlier, he had been called into the restaurant manager's office and told that budget cuts were coming. He was a good waiter, reliable, never late, never complained. But good didn't protect you from numbers on a spreadsheet. 2 days after that, his landlord raised the rent. 2 days after that, his daughter Emma needed dental surgery he couldn't afford. Then came the phone call. A woman with a smooth voice introduced herself as an attorney representing the Hale family. She said his name like it was already written down somewhere. She said they had reviewed his background. Single father, no criminal record, formerly married, wife deceased, quiet life, no social media presence, no debt that mattered, clean. She asked if he would consider a meeting. Daniel almost hung up, but then she mentioned compensation, enough to cover his daughter's surgery, enough to keep them housed for years, enough to stop the slow panic that had been tightening his chest every night. So he came. Now he sat across from Eleanor Hale, while 2 lawyers and a man who looked like he'd never waited for anything in his life watched him closely. The terms were laid out calmly. No raised voices, no threats, just facts. Eleanor needed a husband, not for romance, not for appearances alone. The board wanted stability. Investors wanted reassurance. A married, disabled, unmarried woman in power made people nervous, even if they never said it out loud. Daniel would marry her, live in the estate, be seen with her at events, speak when spoken to, stay discreet. There would be a contract, a timeline, an exit clause. He would be paid well. He listened without interrupting. When they finished, the room went quiet. All eyes turned to Eleanor. She hadn't spoken yet. She studied Daniel like she was measuring weight, not value. Her eyes were sharp, not cold, just precise. "You don't have to say yes," she said. Her voice was even, controlled. "I won't force you." Daniel swallowed. He thought about Emma asleep on the couch because her bedroom heater was broken. He thought about the envelope from the dentist folded in his jacket pocket. He thought about how tired he was of choosing between dignity and survival. "I understand," he said. His voice was steady, surprising even himself. "This isn't real. It's business." Eleanor tilted her head slightly. "Is that what makes it easier?" "Yes," he said, "for both of us." One of the lawyers smiled, relieved. The contract was slid across the table. Daniel signed. The wedding was scheduled for 6 weeks later. The news broke quietly at first,
business journals, society pages, then louder. Headlines questioned motives without asking questions. Memes appeared. Late-night jokes followed. The billionaire in the wheelchair, the nobody husband, the charity case, the gold digger. Daniel didn't read them, but he heard the tone when people spoke to him now. At the grocery store, at Emma's school, curiosity mixed with judgment, pity layered with envy. Emma didn't understand. She just asked if the new house would have a garden. Daniel said yes. That was true. Eleanor moved through preparations with the same precision she used in boardrooms. Nothing emotional. No dress shopping together. No shared dinners. Communication through assistance. Distance by design. They met once more before the wedding. It was late evening. The estate was quiet. Eleanor was in the library reviewing documents. Daniel stood awkwardly near the doorway. "You don't have to hover," she said without looking. "Sorry," he replied, stepping back. She finally looked at him, really looked. "You're doing this for your daughter," she said. He nodded, no denial. "That makes you predictable," then paused, "and honest." He didn't know if that was praise. The night before the wedding, Daniel lay awake in a guest room too large to feel safe. He stared at the ceiling and wondered what kind of man agreed to this, what kind of example he was setting, what kind of cost came later. Down the hall, Eleanor sat alone, her wedding dress hanging untouched. She stared at her reflection and thought about control, about assumptions, about how people decided who she was before she ever spoke. Tomorrow, they would all be watching, and none of them knew what was coming.
The morning of the wedding arrived without ceremony, no excitement, no nerves that showed themselves in obvious ways. Just a quiet tension that sat in the air like dust you couldn't quite see but felt in your throat when you breathed. Daniel woke before dawn. The estate was silent at that hour, too silent. He lay in the unfamiliar bed, staring at a ceiling that looked like it belonged to someone else's life. For a moment, he forgot where he was. Then memory slid back in, slow and heavy. Wedding day. He sat up and rubbed his face with both hands. His phone buzzed on the nightstand, a message from the sitter. Emma woke up early. She asked if today was the day. Daniel closed his eyes. "Yes," he typed back. "Be good for Miss Harris. I'll see you tonight." A pause. "Are you nervous?" He stared at the question longer than he should have. "A little," he replied, "but it's okay." It wasn't a lie, not exactly. He had learned to carry fear quietly. Fear was familiar. This was just another version of it, dressed better. He showered, dressed, and followed the schedule that had been emailed to him down to the minute. Breakfast he didn't eat. A car he didn't need, waiting anyway. Assistants who smiled politely, but didn't ask his name. Everyone knew who Eleanor Hale was. No one cared who he was. That was part of the agreement. The chapel sat on the far end of the property, a restored stone building that looked more historical than holy. Guests arrived in quiet clusters, business partners, board members, people who wore money like it was part of their skin. Daniel stood at the front beside the officiant, hands clasped, eyes forward. Whispers moved through the pews. "That's him. He looks normal. I expected more ambition. He's probably grateful." Daniel heard none of it directly, but he felt it. Judgment had a weight to it, a pressure that settled between the shoulders. The doors opened. Eleanor entered exactly as planned. She was seated in her wheelchair, dressed in ivory silk that fell perfectly around her, tailored to her body, not trying to disguise anything.
Her hair was pinned back simply, no veil, no attempt at softness. She looked composed, untouchable. A murmur rippled through the room, not admiration, assessment. Daniel watched her approach slowly, pushed by an aide who stopped a few feet away. Eleanor dismissed the aide with a glance. The woman stepped back immediately. Daniel met Eleanor's eyes. There was no warmth there, but there was no fear either, just awareness, sharp, present, fully awake. The ceremony began. The officiant spoke about partnership, about commitment, about vows that meant different things to different people. Daniel wondered if anyone else in the room understood how little romance existed between them, or if they preferred their own version of the story. Then came the question, if anyone here has reason why these two should not be joined in marriage. Silence stretched. Daniel felt his heart beat in his ears. He didn't expect anything. This was a transaction, clean, controlled. Then Eleanor moved. It wasn't sudden. That was the strange part. She placed her hands on the armrests of her wheelchair, fingers spreading slightly, adjusting her grip. The movement was small, deliberate, intentional. Daniel's breath caught. The room seemed to lean forward. Eleanor pushed. Slowly. Her body shifted. A subtle tremor passed through her arms. Her shoulders tightened. The silk of her dress creased in places no one had noticed before. She stood. Gasps echoed through the chapel. Someone dropped something. A chair scraped. Daniel stared. Eleanor stood fully upright, unsupported, her posture steady but tense, as if every muscle were working harder than it should. She did not smile. She did not look around. She looked at the board members in the front row, at the investors, at the people who whispered about her limitations. Then she spoke. "There is no objection," she said calmly. Her voice carried. The room was frozen. After a moment that felt like it might split something open, Eleanor lowered herself back into the chair with controlled precision. Only then did Daniel notice the sheen of sweat at her temple, the faint tightness in her jaw. She paid for that moment. The ceremony resumed awkwardly. The officiant stumbled through the rest. Vows were exchanged, rings placed. Applause followed, hesitant at first, then louder, as if volume could smooth over confusion. Daniel leaned down slightly. "You didn't tell me," he whispered. "I wasn't obliged to," Eleanor replied quietly. "Neither were you." They were pronounced married. At the reception, the atmosphere shifted. People watched Eleanor differently now. Curiosity had sharpened into something closer to unease. The story they thought they understood had changed shape. Daniel stood beside her, silent as expected. A board member approached, an older man with a careful smile. "Remarkable," he said to Eleanor. "We had no idea." "You didn't ask," she replied. The man laughed uncomfortably. "Well, today has been full of surprises." "Yes," Eleanor said, "it has." Daniel noticed how people addressed him now, not dismissive, not quite respectful either. Curious, measuring. "So you're the husband. Must be quite the adjustment." "Lucky man." He nodded politely, said little. Later, when the crowd thinned, Eleanor signaled for him to come closer. "You're wondering why I did it," she said quietly. "Yes," Daniel replied. "Good," she said. "You should." They sat in silence for a moment. I could stand for short periods, with pain, with effort. I chose not to, because when people think you're weaker than you are, they reveal things. Daniel glanced at her. And today? Today, she said, I needed them to understand that I choose restraint, not because I lack strength. Daniel absorbed that. You were part of that message, Eleanor added. He frowned slightly. How? You stood there without flinching. You didn't reach for me. You didn't try to help. You trusted I knew what I was doing. Daniel hesitated. I didn't know if I was allowed to. Eleanor smiled faintly. That's honesty. The drive back to the estate was quiet. That night, in separate rooms, neither of them slept. Daniel lay awake thinking about what he had witnessed, about assumptions, about how easily people accepted stories that made them comfortable. Down the hall, Eleanor removed her dress slowly, wincing despite herself. She stared at her reflection and wondered if the message had landed. Because standing up had never been the hardest part. The harder part was what came next. And tomorrow, they would begin living the version of the story the world thought it understood, whether they liked it or not.
The morning after the wedding did not feel like the beginning of anything. It felt like an aftermath. Daniel woke to the sound of birds outside a window that was too wide, too clean. For a moment, he didn't remember where he was. Then the weight returned. Not panic, something heavier, awareness. He sat up slowly. The room smelled faintly of fresh linen and polish. Nothing here belonged to him. Not the furniture, not the view, not even the quiet. He dressed and stepped into the hallway, unsure of where he was expected to be. The estate had its own rhythm. Staff moved efficiently, silently. They nodded at him now. Not warmly, not coldly, just acknowledgement. Breakfast was already set in a sunlit dining room. Eleanor sat at the far end of the table, dressed in tailored black, her tablet open, her posture composed. She looked exactly as she had the day before. No softness, no aftermath. "You can sit anywhere," she said, without looking up. Daniel chose the chair across from her, a deliberate choice, equal distance, no assumption. They ate in silence for a few minutes. "You stood longer than expected," Daniel said finally. Eleanor didn't look surprised. "So did you." He paused. "I wasn't aware I was being measured." She set the tablet down. "Everyone is always being measured. You just don't usually see the scale." Daniel absorbed that. "You planned it?" "Yes." "To make a point?" "Yes." "And me?" Eleanor studied him. "You were the variable." Daniel frowned slightly. "That's not reassuring." "It's honest," she replied. They finished breakfast. Eleanor rolled back from the table with practiced ease. "I'll be leaving for the office. You're not required to come." Daniel nodded. "I have to pick up my daughter later." Eleanor paused. "She's not staying here yet." "No," Daniel said. "She's with a sitter." "Good. Don't move her life too fast. People mistake money for stability." Daniel looked at her then. "You sound like you've done that before." Her expression tightened, just enough to notice. "Once." The car took Eleanor away. The house felt larger without her. Daniel wandered, not aimlessly. He'd spent years learning how to occupy spaces where he didn't quite belong. He found the library, the garden, the staff entrance. He made mental notes, exit paths, quiet corners.
By afternoon, the news had shifted tone. Videos of the wedding circulated online. Headlines changed. Not helpless after all. CEO's calculated display shocks board. Was it performance or power move? Daniel avoided reading comments, but they reached him anyway. At Emma's school, whispers followed him into the office. Parents looked up too quickly. A teacher smiled too tightly. "You're Eleanor Hale's husband," the principal said. Not a question. "Yes." "Well," she said, clasping her hands, "we're glad Emma will have expanded opportunities." Daniel's jaw tightened. Emma already has everything she needs. The principal blinked, then smiled again. That evening, Daniel brought Emma to the estate. She stepped out of the car cautiously, holding his hand tighter than usual. "It's big," she whispered. "Yes," Daniel said, "but it's just a place." Eleanor was in the living room when they entered. She looked up as Emma walked in. Emma stared at the wheelchair, then at Eleanor's face. Children noticed everything. "Hi," Eleanor replied. Her voice was neutral, but not cold. "You stood up," Emma said bluntly. Daniel froze. Eleanor didn't. "Yes." "Does it hurt?" "Yes." Emma nodded. "Okay." She accepted the answer and turned to Daniel. "Can I see the garden?" "Yes," he said quickly. They stepped outside. Eleanor watched them through the glass. Later that night, after Emma fell asleep in a guest room, Eleanor and Daniel found themselves in the kitchen, not intentionally, just proximity. "She's observant," Eleanor said. "She's honest," Daniel replied. "She didn't pity me? She doesn't understand why she should." Eleanor considered that. Days passed, routines formed. Daniel learned the staff names, fixed a loose hinge himself instead of calling someone. Eleanor noticed, but didn't comment. At a board meeting later that week, Daniel waited in the hallway. Voices rose inside. "You embarrassed us. You destabilized investor confidence. You exceeded the agreed narrative." Eleanor's voice cut through, calm and sharp. "Your narrative." Silence followed. When she exited, her face was composed, but her hands trembled slightly. "Was it worth it?" Daniel asked quietly. "Yes," she said. "They needed to know I'm not an object they can position. And now? Now they'll test me." That night, Daniel overheard two staff members whispering, "He's temporary. She'll replace him once the image resets. He should enjoy it while it lasts." Daniel didn't confront them, but Eleanor did. The next morning, both staff members were reassigned. No drama, no explanation. At a public fundraiser a week later, Eleanor insisted Daniel walk beside her, not behind, not ahead. Cameras flashed. A donor leaned in too close. "You're very lucky," he told Daniel. "She's quite the arrangement." Daniel smiled politely. "She's my wife." The man laughed. "Of course." Eleanor stopped. The crowd shifted. She turned to the donor. "You're confusing access with permission." The man flushed. They walked on. Later, in the car, Daniel spoke. "You didn't have to do that." "Yes," Eleanor replied. "You did." He looked at her. "Why?" "Because silence teaches people what they can get away with." Daniel nodded slowly. That night, Eleanor stood again, longer this time, alone in the hallway, gripping the rail. Daniel watched from a distance, unsure whether to offer help. She didn't ask. She lowered herself back down,
breathing hard. "You could have fallen," he said. "I know. Why push yourself?" She looked at him. "Because everyone assumes the chair is the limit. It's not." He hesitated. "Then what is?" Eleanor met his eyes. "Trust." The word hung between them. Daniel realized then that this marriage wasn't just performance. It was a negotiation of power neither of them had finished defining. And the world outside was already trying to decide the ending for them.
The shift happened quietly. No announcement, no dramatic moment anyone could point to later and say, that was it. It arrived the way real changes usually did, gradual, almost invisible, until it wasn't. It started with an article, a long-form piece in a respected business magazine. Not gossip, not commentary, an analysis. It praised Eleanor's leadership, her recent restructuring, her unexpected resilience. Daniel was mentioned once, barely, referred to as her husband with no elaboration. The comments were worse. He brings nothing, a prop, a sympathy figure. She'll discard him once the narrative settles. Daniel read them late at night, sitting at the kitchen table long after the house had gone quiet. He wasn't angry, he was tired. He'd lived inside other people's assumptions his whole life. This was just a louder version. The next morning, Eleanor noticed. "You didn't sleep," she said, not looking up from her coffee. Daniel shrugged. Emma had a nightmare. Eleanor studied him for a moment. "That's not why." He didn't respond. That afternoon, Eleanor asked him to come to the office. It wasn't a request. Hale Industries occupied an entire block downtown. Security was tight. The staff watched Daniel carefully as he followed Eleanor through glass corridors and steel doors. He could feel the judgment again, the unspoken question, what is he doing here? In the boardroom, Eleanor took her seat at the head of the table. Daniel remained standing. "You can sit," she said. He didn't. "I'm not here to pretend I belong." A murmur rippled through the room. Eleanor's eyes sharpened. "Then why are you here?" "Because you asked, and because people are mistaking my silence for weakness." The board members exchanged looks. One of them spoke. "This is highly irregular." "Yes, so is underestimating someone because they don't perform power the way you expect." She turned to Daniel. "Speak." Daniel's pulse quickened. He hadn't prepared remarks. He didn't have slides. He just had truth. "I don't have money," he said evenly. "I don't have influence. What I do have is perspective. You see risk as numbers. I see it as people leaving when they feel disposable." Silence. "You're bleeding loyalty," he continued, "not because your strategy is wrong, but because no one believes they matter beyond output." A board member scoffed. "And your solution? Stop posturing, start listening." Someone laughed quietly. Eleanor didn't. "Meeting adjourned," she said. The room emptied fast. Daniel stood there, heart racing. "You embarrassed them," Eleanor said once they were alone. "Yes, so did you." She studied him, searching for something, motive, ambition, fear. "You're not afraid of losing this," she said finally. "No, I'm afraid of teaching my daughter that silence is the price of survival." Eleanor looked away. That night, the backlash came fast. Emails, calls, advisors warning of instability, headlines questioning her judgment again. The story was shifting and not in her favor. Daniel found Eleanor alone in the study, lights off, staring out at the city. "They're circling," she said quietly. "I know." "You could walk away," she added. "The contract allows it." Daniel shook his head. "Not like this." She turned. "Why?" "Because this isn't about the contract anymore." Eleanor absorbed that. The next day, Emma was bullied at school. Nothing overt, just exclusion, whispers, a classmate's parent pulling their child away. Daniel found out when Emma came home quieter than usual. "They said you're only married for money," she said, eyes down. Daniel knelt in front of her. "And what do you think?" "I think you wouldn't do that,
but they made it sound bad. Daniel hugged her tightly. That evening, Eleanor listened as he told her. "They're coming for her now," Daniel said. Eleanor's face hardened. "Then we changed the rules." At the next public appearance, Eleanor did something unexpected. She introduced Daniel, not as her husband, as her partner. She spoke about his background, his work ethic, his values, not defensively, factually. Daniel stood beside her, heart pounding. Questions followed. Was this strategic? Is he being groomed for influence? Is this a rebrand? Eleanor answered calmly. No, this is accountability. The room buzzed. That night, Daniel confronted her. "You didn't ask me," he said. "I didn't need permission to tell the truth," then paused. "But you deserved warning." "Yes, I did." They stood there, tension thick. "Why do you keep doing this? Pushing, provoking?" "Because if I stop, they'll decide who I am for me." Eleanor softened. "You don't have to fight everyone." "I do, or I disappear." He considered that. Then he said, "Not alone." The words surprised both of them. Eleanor looked at him, really looked. For the first time, the power between them felt unbalanced in a different way. Not money, not status, choice. The next week, a board member resigned. Quietly, no statement. Others followed. The company stabilized, but differently now. Slower, more careful. Daniel was offered a formal role. He declined. "I don't want power," he said. "I want boundaries." Eleanor respected that. That night, they sat in the living room, the space between them smaller than before. "You know this won't end cleanly," Eleanor said. Daniel nodded. "Nothing worth keeping does." She looked at him. "You could still leave." "I know." "Why don't you?" Daniel thought of Emma, of silence, of standing in rooms where people assumed his worth. "Because staying costs me less than leaving." Eleanor closed her eyes briefly. The world outside continued speculating, judging, predicting collapse. Inside the house, something steadier was forming. Not romance, alignment. And the final test was coming. Neither of them could avoid it.
The final test didn't arrive with chaos. It came with paperwork. A sealed envelope delivered one quiet morning, no return address. Legal weight heavy enough that Daniel felt it before he opened it. Eleanor was already at the table, reading financial reports. She looked up once, immediately alert. "What is it?" she asked. Daniel handed her the envelope. She didn't open it right away. She never rushed bad news. That was one of the things he'd learned about her. She placed it neatly on the table, folded her hands, then looked at him. "Sit," she said. He did. She opened the envelope carefully, read once, then again. Her face didn't change, but Daniel recognized the tension now, the slight tightening around her mouth, the way her shoulders held too still. "They're invoking the contingency clause," she said. Daniel exhaled slowly. "Which means?" "They're claiming I misrepresented my condition," Eleanor replied, "that the standing incident constituted deception." "And the marriage?" Daniel asked. Eleanor met his eyes. "They're arguing it was coerced, that you were incentivized into silence." Daniel let out a short, humorless breath. "So now I'm the victim." "Yes," Eleanor said flatly, "or the accomplice, depending on which angle benefits them more." Outside, the world continued. Traffic, construction, normal sounds that didn't care what was unraveling inside that room. "They want me to step down," Eleanor continued, quietly, in exchange for a settlement. Daniel leaned back. "And if you don't?" "They'll take it public, paint me as unstable, manipulative, dangerous." Silence settled between them. Daniel thought of Emma, of school hallways, of whispers. "Do you want to fight?" he asked. Eleanor didn't answer immediately. When she did,
Her voice was softer than he'd ever heard it. "I'm tired," she said. Daniel nodded. "That's allowed." She looked at him then, not as a CEO, not as a symbol, just a woman who had been standing too long. "They'll destroy you too," she said. "Your reputation, your daughter's peace. I won't ask you to stay through that." Daniel didn't respond right away. Instead, he stood and walked to the window, looked out at the city that had judged them from the beginning. "I grew up invisible," he said. "I learned early that power wasn't for people like me. I learned to keep my head down, to accept scraps without complaint." He turned back to her. "I don't want Emma to learn that." Eleanor swallowed. "So no," Daniel continued, "I'm not leaving." The legal battle was brutal. Headlines returned with teeth. Disabled CEO accused of deception. Marriage under scrutiny. Was the husband paid to comply? Daniel was subpoenaed, questioned, his finances dissected, his past dragged into rooms he wasn't allowed to enter. Emma was pulled from school for a week. One night, after a particularly vicious article, Daniel found Eleanor in the hallway, standing, alone, hands gripping the rails so tightly her knuckles were white. "Sit," Daniel said gently. She shook her head. "If I sit now, I won't stand again." Daniel stepped closer, not touching, just present. "You don't have to prove anything." Eleanor's breath shook. "I've been proving myself my entire life." "I know," Daniel said. "You can stop." She looked at him like she didn't know how. The court date arrived faster than either expected. Daniel testified, not eloquently, not dramatically. He told the truth, that the marriage had started as a contract, that he had been paid, that he had agreed because he needed to protect his daughter. The room leaned in. "And now?" the attorney asked. Daniel looked at Eleanor. "Now," Daniel said, "I'm here because I chose to be." The room went quiet. The ruling came days later. Eleanor retained her position, barely, with oversight, with conditions, but she stayed. The board fractured permanently. The story shifted again. Not a fairy tale, not a scandal either. Something messier, something real. Months passed. The estate changed, became quieter, less performative. Eleanor worked fewer hours, delegated more, allowed herself to sit without apology. Daniel found work again, not glamorous, honest. Emma returned to school, stronger than before. One evening, Daniel and Eleanor sat on the back patio, the city lights distant, no cameras, no audience. "The contract expires tomorrow," she said. Daniel nodded. "I know." Silence. "You can leave," she added. "I know." Another pause. "Do you want to?" she asked. Daniel considered the question carefully, not emotionally, honestly. "No," he said. Eleanor's breath caught just slightly. "This wouldn't be simple," she said. "No," Daniel agreed. "It wouldn't look good," she added. "Most honest things don't." She smiled faintly, not the smile she wore for investors, the one she wore when she let herself be seen. "I don't need you to stay. I want you to choose it." Daniel reached for her hand, not helping, not steadying, just holding. "I am." They didn't kiss. They didn't promise forever. They sat there, hands linked, the weight of what they'd survived settling into something quieter. Not happiness, but dignity. Later that night, Daniel tucked Emma into bed. "Are you staying?" she asked sleepily. "Yes," he said. She smiled and rolled over. The world never fully stopped watching, but it learned something. Not everyone who stands does it to prove strength. Some stand to claim truth, and some stay not because they're trapped, but because leaving would cost them who they are.